Lesson 16, Manipura Chakra. Manipura means city of jewels. Manipura Chakra is the chakra that is responsible for the generation of energy in our bodies. It is the chakra that is most consistently full of energy, hence the name City of Jewels. Jewels are always shiny. Manipura Chakra, first of all, we need to correct something. I wrote these texts more than 20 years ago, 24 years ago, 23, 24 years ago. And insight since then has improved, of course, evolved. But what you read there is what most martial artists and Buddhists and yogis think is Manipura Chakra. I touched upon the subject a little bit last week, and I told you, I promised you that I would explain. So there's a very interesting phenomenon going on. Here you see the description of two different concepts, if you understand what this is about. Because in the past I was taught that Manipura Chakra is what we know as Danjan. Manipura Chakra is somewhere around here, this area, around the diaphragm. Yeah? But when you talk with Buddhists or with martial artists, they always talk about Danjan. And when they talk about the location of Danjan, opinions vary. Some will say it's here, but more likely they will either point out the navel or lower, between the navel and the groin. So what is it? Manipura Chakra is here, not the navel or below the navel. So there is an inconsistency there. And I solved the problem based on other things that we have studied in yoga. And last week we touched upon the subject because of fire. The term digestive fire comes back very often in the text that we read, especially when it comes to energy control exercises. And digestive fire is a mistranslation from the Sanskrit word Agni. So when we talk about digestive fire, we think about Manipura Chakra, because Manipura Chakra is responsible for all digestive functions. The production of gall in the gallbladder, the acids that are being produced to digest food, etc. The liver and the spleen are organs that are functions of Manipura Chakra. So there is a lot of dogma and confusion about this issue. Digestive fire is not limited to Manipura Chakra, and it is not also limited to digestion. Danjan, therefore, also is not limited to Manipura Chakra. And why is this important? Well, why do monks and martial artists always talk about Danjan? Why do they always talk about it? Monks always talk about Danjan, Buddhist monks. Why? Because somehow we, from a long forgotten past, we know that it's a very important phenomenon in relation to developing spirituality. But nobody can explain exactly how it works. This is how it works. You start practicing yoga correctly. You meditate. You start with energy control. And time again you see that your digestive fire improves. Your danjan comes into being. Danjan is a phenomenon that does not manifest in untrained people. This is what happened. You start from the bottom going up. That is how your development goes. Since you were born, it went like that. But when you start practicing yoga, you just start all over again from the bottom, going up. And you start with generating more energy. Generally, people who start practicing yoga, they do indeed experience more energy. They feel more energetic, they feel less tired, they feel better overall. So, relative sattva harmony occurs in Muladhara Chakra. We also reverse the condensation of energy that moves and manifests towards the bottom. So, Apana Prana from Muladhara Chakra, because we activate it, rises up. Active energy expands, rises up. And it mixes with Samana Prana of Svadhisthana Chakra. That energy together is more powerful than an individual chakra, the energy of an individual chakra. So the process continues. The expansion and the rising of energy continues. And those two energies together then mix or fuse with Manipura Chakra. This is Danjan. It is the three chakras together. That phenomenon occurs in people who practice yoga, but also martial arts, Buddhism, all kinds of spiritual practices. If they are done in accordance with the ancient tradition correctly, it leads to this phenomenon. This is so important because this becomes a very powerful ball of energy that rises up above the diaphragm, opens the heart, and is responsible for the awakening of the spiritual practitioner. Ajna Chakra and the Crown Chakra. This is a huge ball of energy. Agni, fire. Erase the word digestive, it's fire. And that is why Buddhists and martial artists and yogis always point to the lower belly, because that is where it's like a, you know, have you ever seen coal burning in a furnace? It's glowing, it's moving, it's expanding and rising. That is basically what you have here, fire. That fuels your further development. Development that does not take place if you do not condition yourself, if you do not train yourself. And of course, other activities do contribute to this process. Exercising does contribute to a healthier energy household and generation of energy in the chakras, but nothing is so efficient and effective as a very controlled practice like yoga. It's not only yoga, there are other, in Korea you have several spiritual practices that come close to yoga. Tai Chi, if it is done correctly, leads also to this phenomenon. And martial arts in general do have an effect in this respect, but because yoga is very measured and controlled, it is more effective and efficient to bring about this process. It does improve your digestion, but it is not limited to digestion, as the interpretations of the text often kind of make us believe. This is about vital energy, which in Korean you call ki energy, chi energy, vital energy. Vital energy is responsible for everything that grows, that develops, that moves, that is dynamic. A lot of people are lacking that fire, that ki, chi, or vital energy. We are stuck physically, mentally, and spiritually. So this is of great consequence when you start that process of generating more and more relatively harmonious energy, leading to the phenomenon that we call danjan. So this is very important to know and to remember in the future. This is part of your initiation into yoga, because most people simply don't understand this properly. The subtle element of the chakra is fire. I mentioned fire many times because this chakra, other than Ajna chakra being very important as being in the center of everything, because there you can control the activities of the lower chakras. Manipura chakra is very important because it is at the center of all your bodily functions. If Manipura chakra is poor, the other chakras are poor, and all your functions will be poor, meaning translating into poor health. Physical health, also mental health. Everything depends on energy. All your functioning, but also your condition, your sense of condition, your health, your wealth, your well-being, your happiness, all depends on energy. So energy is your most precious asset. And you guard it with your yoga practice, with being selective, but also with proper fuel, which means the food that you eat. There are a lot of foods, because we live in a time of processed foods. If you go to the supermarket, about 80% of everything that you find there is processed. There are many foods that cost more energy than that they give or provide valuable energy. So the purer your food, the more energy you will extract from it, without spending lots of energy to process it, to digest it. So the subtle element is fire, earth, water, fire. The subtle vehicle of action, the karmandriya, is movement, all movement. If you are low in energy, of course, if I'm a real yoga teacher, I would say you should practice asana. But I would actually say grab a bike or make a long walk, because if you move until you really feel you're heating up, which is 15-20 minutes after you start walking or riding a bicycle, that is where you generate huge amounts of energy. It's not as controlled as with asana practice, but asana practice is refinement. But if you talk about real fire here, just raw movement, exercise is very effective, very powerful. I think I mentioned several times already that in contrast with what many yoga teachers will tell you, that you should only practice asana, I can't live without movement. I have to walk, I have to heat up, I have to do something that goes beyond standing still in asana. They're both important. So movement, generation, it's the function of this chakra. So lack of movement automatically leads to lack of fire, literally. The subtle organ of perception is sight, your eyes. Subtle energy is simply prana. We had apana prana for Muladhara Chakra, the earth center. Then we had Samana prana for Svadhisthana Chakra, the water center. Here, because this chakra is responsible for providing the whole system with energy, it's simply prana with no addition, generic prana. Manipura Chakra is like a nuclear power plant, like a energy plant, energy generating plant. It provides everything else with energy. So we just call it prana. The color yellow belongs to this chakra and the mantra, the vibration Ram. Manipura Chakra is responsible for ambition, the will to conquer, and it is practically, it is responsible for all our actions and reactions, impulses. This is hugely important because most people feel that they are living life in a reactive way, not being able to control their actions and reactions. Here, if you understand how this works, and that is why I emphasize the fire poses, like the leg raise and the boat poses, here you can learn to actually control impulses. We are all individuals, and because of past experiences, we will all act and react in different ways given the same situation. Because that is how we are each individually conditioned by our past experiences. Which proves that we have no control over it. If you understand that, then you understand that it is the reason why we end up in conflict. It is the reason why we end up doing things we regret. It is the reason why we find ourselves doing things repetitively, of which we know that we shouldn't do them. And we do them again. So we live in a perpetual pattern of action, reaction, regret, and guilt. And it just repeats itself. Over time, especially if you understand how it works and start paying attention to how you function in daily life situations, you will use this insight to more and more control your actions and reactions. So this is very tricky because the previous chakra we learned to be ourselves, to respect, accept, and allow emotions, etc. And here we are actually talking about control. Control of actions, reactions, impulses, etc. So this is a tricky thing that sounds very paradoxical, very contradicting. But what this really is about is like walking on a tightrope. This is a balancing act. When you walk on a tightrope, the slightest loss of balance can make you fall off to the left side of the rope or the right side of the rope. So it is about becoming, first of all, aware of our subconscious functioning, And based on that insight, to become more and more selective of what we allow to manifest and what we need to canalize. That means that when you are hit with an emotion because somebody is acting in a way that causes irritation or anger or any kind of impulse that leads to reactionary reaction. As a yogi, with your increasing consciousness, you already know that if you allow yourself to act on that impulse, it's going to blow up the situation. You know, you anticipate. That is the power of the yogi, the power of anticipation. You anticipate that if you allow that impulse to lead to a reaction, a manifestation of a reaction, it's going to lead to blowback. It's going to lead to a counter reaction. It's going to lead to a vicious cycle of conflict. And when you anticipate such process, you of course choose to control that impulse and try to canalize that energy involved in that reaction towards a more diplomatic way of dealing with the situation. So not a direct emotional reaction, but a measured reaction with which, instead of causing a vicious cycle of disharmony, conflict, with which you actually pour oil on the waves and create sattva again, create harmony again. That will be your power further down the road. As a human being, there is the reaction, but you intercept the reaction and you canalize that energy into a way of your choosing, based on what you know will lead to a harmonious solution of the issue that you are at that moment dealing with. It's all located in Manipura Chakra. Ambition, willpower, ego, all located in this chakra. Ego is hugely important. We talked about it before. We'll talk about it again today. We will talk about it again in the future, because ego is responsible for our reactions. When somebody does something that we don't agree with, we feel indignified. And because we feel indignified, or we feel wronged, we think we have, based on ego, we think we have a right to fight back. Now, like every other issue that we are dealing with, it's not that simple. Because you do have a right. You do have a right to protect yourself, to defend yourself. But if you just fight based on instincts, impulses, you just make things worse, as you probably know. It just leads to a tit-for-tat situation with a revenge and a counter-revenge, and I'm smarter than you and I can hurt you more than you did to me. And no, you must protect your most precious asset, which is your energy, which is your consciousness, which is your vulnerability that comes with all this. But you do that as a master, not as a fool, because you know that if you act in reactive ways, it just leads to more disharmony, more conflict. One of the reasons why people go to yoga is to learn to avoid all that, because life is already difficult enough. There is conflict enough. So when we do the fire poses, including Mayurasana, try to do that with some sense of taking it serious, but aware of how you aggravate Manipura Chakra. Because generally, when we do an exercise, a fire pose, we all feel that it's hard to perform. And if we act like normal, unconditioned human beings, we grind our teeth. And we're like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do this. And that is how we often deal with fire issues. Grind your teeth and no pain, no gain, and I can do this. Yeah, that is the power that we have. Choosing to bite through things and use our willpower, physical willpower. But we go a level further, a level higher, because we know that this is accompanied by a lot of disharmony. So we try to find a balanced way, a more measured way of dealing with these situations. You have, in fact, subconsciously been conditioned, probably, by your parents or teachers to control Manipura Chakra. But because it is subconsciously, it's not very effective. If it is correct, your parents have told you to count to 10 whenever you're upset, when you're angry or sad. Count to 10 or take a deep breath. It buys you some time. But you never learned how it works. You never learned about Manipura Chakra, about the reactive ways, the impulsive way that we act and react. So from now on, you count to 10, you take a deep breath, but you do it very consciously. Feel what you feel. And you will feel a lot of turmoil, especially in the belly when conflict occurs. And this happens so many times a day that we don't even notice it. Start paying attention, and like when you do the exercises, you do that in a rather playful way. Try to play with daily situations, life situations, where you are normally inclined to behave in a reactive way, where you continue on this wave of disharmony, which is, for normal people, is just the normal practice of daily life. Modern media, social media, is a very good way to practice this. In daily life, you're facing somebody directly. So often it's very difficult to buy yourself some time. You can practice yourself in this matter with social media. You read a message and you want to react. Then before you actually react, ask yourself, if I would react in this way, try to envision how the other person would feel about that. And possibly react back to you. And you will see that almost 99% of the times that you are inclined to react, and if you look a little bit closer, you will come to the conclusion that if you will react, it will lead to a conflict. It will lead to the other person feeling bad and reacting back with a bad reaction, with an insult. Then try to come to the point where your reaction acknowledges the person, you make your point, but in such a way that that person agrees with you, rather than wants to counter-react, counter-punch. It's a very interesting game, and you will see it's easier than you think. If only just close your eyes for a moment, or you count to 10 as your mom would tell you. Just close your eyes for a moment and try to envision what your reaction would cause if you would just express it just like that. And then toy with the words, toy with be honest to yourself also, because of Manipura Chakra, the location of ego, you yourself sometimes feel indignified and inclined to retaliate. Practice to not react like that. That is Manipura Chakra. It will be of incredible value further down the line in your life. I have totally transformed my life based on this. From always failing, always fighting against windmills, against people I perceive to have been wronged by. Everything has become totally the opposite. There's harmony in interactions. There is goodwill in interactions. It didn't exist in the past. This occurs when you control your impulsive reactions towards people and towards situations. When that happens, you deserve the addition of Ananda to your name. You know that yogis, throughout the years and decades, they change their name constantly. And their name changes based on the developmental level that they are at. The Ananda is one of the highest levels, where you are functioning from your heart. So instead of reacting from Manipura Chakra or based on ego, you act and react based on compassion, consideration of the other person rather than yourself. Then you deserve Ananda to your name, which means bliss. Bliss or unconditional love. On page 2 you see this illustration with a snail, the housing of a snail, with a rabbit living in the housing of the snail. And you see imprinted festina lente. And festina lente is the paradox that everything in yoga, or that represents the paradox that everything in yoga is. Because in the end, it's always a balance between left and right. Festina lenta means hurry slowly. How is that possible? That means just relax, take a deep breath. Do what you need to do it efficiently, but do it in a relaxed way. Hurry slowly. It's an expression from the Romans. Festina lente. So no pali, but chon pali, chonchoni pali chonchoni. A balance. Because Manipura Chakra is the fire center, we should not petrify the fire. We should slow it down by hurrying slowly. People who are always in a hurry, they always step on people's toes. And they're not aware of it. Fire center is also, by the way, responsible for a lot of diseases, especially in modern society, because of stress. Stress occurs when you don't hurry slowly. Stress occurs when you're always in a hurry without slowing down. Manipura Chakra, you get stomach-related problems, stomach ulcers, digestive problems. Hurry slowly means it's not an excuse to be lazy, as many people interpret, but to be efficient, be diligent, but relax, take a deep breath. Ambition is mentioned several times in relation to Manipura Chakra, as is ego, and that might give an impression that ego and ambition should be avoided. That is not the case. I explained about ego before, that it can go two ways. It can work against you, can be very destructive, or it can build and create. Ambition is the same. Without ambition, you wouldn't achieve anything in life. But too much ambition leads people to violate the yamas and the niyamas. Too much ambition leads to using our elbows to go to where we want to be, what we want to achieve. It leads to people lying and stealing to get what they want. So ambition, just like ego, it can go both ways. Without ego, you're nothing. But if you're egocentric or egoistic, you don't consider other people's benefit, you don't consider people at all, just yourself. As an example, I made the comparison between Trump and the previous President Obama, but Biden is in the same line. You can very clearly see the contrast between how ego manifests and one being very destructive while the other is healing and constructive. Same with ambition. Ambition is healthy, but it can destroy you and the people around you. So we need a healthy, balanced approach towards fulfilling our ambitions. Because of that, we start the yoga course with the study of the yamas and the niyamas, which will guide you through dealing with these kind of issues like ego and ambition. The liver and the spleen, just for your information, it's not so very important, but liver and the spleen are, we call them secondary chakras of the Manipura Chakra. Interesting to know is that, because it is about energy, about fire, is the spleen is responsible for extracting energy from the environment when we are lacking energy, while the liver is responsible for emitting energy when we have too much of it. So the spleen you can feel when you just had a meal and you start exercising. Everybody who likes exercising has experienced at some point this pinch in your spleen, basically. People who like to drink have experienced the activity of the liver, because alcohol carries lots of heat, energy, and usually around 5 o'clock in the morning, after a night of drinking, you wake up with a sweat, which is indicating the activity of the liver getting rid of excess heat. Interestingly, that always happens around that time in the morning, early in the morning. You recognize that? The last page, you see a picture of me as a teenager. The developmental stage of this chakra is between 15 and 21. Adolescence, puberty, that's when we become very rebellious and we start to resist our parents in the first place. We start to resist authority. It's the time in which we establish our identity. So first you have the stage from birth to 7 in which we are not conscious of ourselves, where safety, security, stability is the most important for our development. Then comes the stage of becoming self-conscious. And then from 15 to 21 comes the stage where we put our foot down. We start to fight for our existence. We want to be heard. We don't want to be bossed around anymore. We want to have something to say also in the matter, etc. Parents who understand this, they will just let you, understanding that it is part of your developmental stages that you go through. Parents who don't understand, they will have constant conflict with their child, and often those children leave home early to live on their own because they are not allowed the room to establish themselves. You see in the very last paragraph the mention of the exercise Mayur Asana. Mayura is the ultimate fire pose. Practice it regularly and you will gain more control over Manipura Chakra. For me, Mayurasana is part of my daily routine. Always Mayurasana, always shoulder stand variations. There are certain poses I always do. Other poses are less important. Important also aspect is the element, I mentioned the element of military draft, military service. To win wars, you need people who are willing to fight. And people between the ages 15 and 21, they are willing to fight. Unscrupulously. You hardly ever see men in their 40s and 50s in the battlefield because they are in a higher stage of development, not capable anymore of killing people, shooting people, etc. But young people, especially men, boys, they want to fight. And they are not in a stage yet, that is the next stage, they are not in a stage yet where they have compassion. So they can go into battle and basically kill people, the opponent, without conscience. That is why countries recruit young men and not old men for military service. There are countries where they recruit children, early teenagers. That's even worse. They're so unconscious yet of themselves and the world around them, which is it is a crime against humanity. Child soldiers. Older soldiers, what do? Strategy. They try to win battles without actually fighting. That is what generals do. There are no generals of 18 years old or 21 years old. Generals are usually in their 50s, 60s. There's a Chinese wisdom from, I think its name is Sun Tzu, is that the best warrior is the warrior that wins battles without fighting. That is basically the task of generals, to try to win battles with the least violence or the least fight possible, or no fight at all, if at all possible. So you see there the use of Ajna Chakra and the crown chakra as a need for functioning on that level. Good questions? Okay. Let's have a short break.